some exemptions to the Fair Housing Act. So to kind of sum all this up, this would apply, the exemptions to this, meaning that some people can discriminate. That's what this is saying. There are some cases where they can. First is that nobody, under any circumstances, can ever discriminate based upon race. That is never permitted under any circumstance. Under some other circumstances, we can discriminate, meaning that I'm not going to rent to anything that's not race related or sell to. So these are these top 3 bullet points. So an owner occupant, buildings with no more than 4 units can discriminate. So if I live in a home and there are between 1 and 4 units, I can discriminate on anything again except for race. So I can say I'm not selling to you, I'm not renting to you, whatever it is, because I'm an occupant. It's not that I just own the thing, I have to actually live in this thing. So if it's a 4-unit quad, fourplex type of property, I live in one of those 4 and the other 3 are tenant occupied. Or it's a duplex and I live in one half and I'm renting out the other half. Things like that. So I occupy the space. If that's the case and it's 4 units or less and I occupy it, I could discriminate. I also, in that situation, cannot use a real estate professional. Anytime a real estate agent is involved in a transaction, nobody can discriminate on any reason. So what we're getting at here is that we're looking at FSBOs, people that are selling their own home or renting their own property that they live in, that they occupy, that in those cases, those people can be bigoted assholes. That's what it amounts to. Outside of that, nobody can engage in discriminatory practices. The other 2 conditions, the first one is that never can anybody use discriminatory advertising. So even though they can make the choice to say that I'm not going to rent or sell to those people, I'm not advertising, I'm not renting to those people. So I can't say that I will only rent to white people or whatever. I can make that decision. Somebody comes in and wants to rent the property, you're not white, okay, I'm not renting to you. Or you're not Native American, whatever. I can't discriminate, or I can't use discriminatory advertising. I can, again, make the choice to do that, but I can't actually advertise it. The last thing is that housing that's operated by private organizations, they can set their own rules to say that the rental or sale of their properties is limited only to members of their organization. The easiest way that I've always described this, people are familiar with the Columbia Club downtown. The Columbia Club is a private organization right on the Circle. You have to be a member, you pay dues to be part of this thing, and the Columbia Club has multiple apartments that they'll rent space out to their members. I'm not a member of the Columbia Club. If I wanted to go rent from them, they can tell me no, and they would have the legal right to do so. So what they're doing is that they're limiting occupancy to only their members. However, inside their membership, they can't be exclusionary. They can't say you're black or you're white or you're Hispanic or whatever. They can't be discriminatory inside their thing, but they can say that you're not part of our organization, so we're not renting to you. So they can do that. So those are the exemptions to the fair housing. They also recognize in here too that there are stipulations for what's called HOPA, or housing for older persons, that recognizes that some communities have been qualified to restrict occupancy to people of a certain age. And there's all kinds of rules in this, none of which you're going to be responsible for knowing, but just know that there are some retirement communities, there are some subdivisions that are designated as housing for older persons, that only people of a certain age can live in them. So they can restrict that too. On page 240, we get into the American with Disabilities Act, the ADA. I mentioned that earlier. This is one of the few laws that actually addresses just all real estate. Everything that we've talked about so far deals with housing, residential dwelling properties. The ADA deals with all properties because it deals with the business where people operate and function out of. So it recognizes that real estate offices, what are their expectations? Commercial buildings, so if I'm renting property, if I'm selling property in a commercial area, I may have to recognize that staircases have to have a railing, that you have to have a ramp to get into certain areas, that you have to have a 36-inch doorway for certain things. So the ADA recognizes those professional facilities and the requirements that they would have to have in order to accommodate people with disabilities and other things like that. From the railings to the elevators to all those things. And then it also regulates employment too. In that, if we have people that work for us that have physical or mental issues, we have to provide some relief for them. So, for an example, if somebody had some back issue of a sort, and they need a special chair, as the employer, I've got to provide a chair for them. If somebody has carpal tunnel or some issue with their wrists and their fingers, maybe I have to buy a special keyboard for them, or they need a special monitor. So the ADA would recognize all that when I hire employees, that I may need to make some alterations to my space to accommodate those people that are working for me. So the ADA kind of encompasses that. Where this ties into real estate again is that if we have an office, we may have to be concerned with some of that. And also if I am certainly a commercial agent dealing in commercial properties, retail strip centers, I've got to watch to see, do I have handicap parking spaces outside? And there's a percentage there. I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with it, but you have to have so many per parking spaces. If you have a facility, you have to have doorways so wide. There's a lot of things they get into with that. So that's what the ADA would look at.